I think we should start by simply acknowledging that time is an elastic thing. So we have this span together in this room. You sit in the darkened room. I am lit in the old way, the way that focuses attention, the way we learned from the Greeks, the one person speaking to the many. We do this, we use this theatrical idiom in an effort to carve at the truth. But let's be honest, time is very elastic. This could be a very, very short hour that passes with a twinkling, or it could be the longest hour of your life. I think you've all had hours like that, maybe even at festivals like this one, perhaps. And you are sizing me up. You are sitting out there in the darkness, and you are watching me up here, and you are assessing, what will he tell me that I do not already know? Because we all know so very much about corporations, and we certainly know who we are in the context of that world. After all, it's the context we live in each and every day of our lives. So let me begin by speaking the truth, or making some attempt to speak the truth, because that is the reason we use these theatrical idioms. The only reason to have the light falling on a single fixed point, to have one person speaking to the many, is to try to clutch at the naked singularity that lies at the heart of the theatrical experience. And that is to say that we will attempt today to tell the truth. We will fail. We will fail terribly, because we are liars and hypocrites all. But we will make the attempt together in this room, and we will see where we can get in this brief span. Now, the best way to begin, I believe, is to acknowledge the hypocrisy of this situation, which is to say that you are sitting in the Sydney Opera House to attend the Festival of Dangerous Ideas. That's absurd. That is deeply absurd, and you need to understand that, or you're not even going to begin to walk down the road. I mean, it's absurd to think that anything dangerous can actually happen in this place, isn't it? You don't actually expect anything dangerous to happen today. You would not have fucking shown up. We, by our nature, avoid danger. We avoid danger in all its forms. And so for an idea to truly be dangerous, it needs to subvert the form, the container that is inside of. And this is quite a container, isn't it? It's a beautiful jewel that sits in the heart of your culture, defining you. One might say even imprisoning you, holding all these cultural ideas fixed in place. And this festival sits inside that cathedral, and it writhes and squirms and struggles to try and make something happen, something unexpected. The truth is that outside the daylight is streaming. We all know that a festival of dangerous ideas should happen just after midnight, in the hour just before things get totally fucked up. That all of you should be drunk on absinthe and maybe done a little bit of cocaine. Really, people should be much more unstable to be at a festival of dangerous ideas. Instead, I can tell, looking at you today, you've had your bagels and your coffee and raisin toast, and you look really well-fed and happy. You look very happy. And that is a big part of the hypocrisy that underlies all of this, because you should really be suspicious of your happiness. You should be deeply, deeply suspicious of it, because we cannot have this kind of complacency if we are not complicit in what we create. And looking out here today, I know you. I know you because I am you. I have walked in your shoes. I've walked among you. I too have read my Chomsky and my Klein. I too saw Inside Job and the Corporation. I know you. And you are in this room seated here because you have engaged in a kind of intellectual fallacy. You were choosing what to see at this festival, and you thought, well, it's early in the day on Saturday, so I want to see something that won't get me riled up, because, later I'm going to see the guy who's going to tell me not to eat meat, and I really am nervous about seeing him, because I really like meat, so I don't even know if I want to go to that. But this guy, I mean, everybody hates corporations, you know? I mean, I hate them, I do. They're bad. They're so bad. I don't like them. I don't like the corporations. I'll go, it'll be great. We'll sit around and we'll sing songs and we'll talk about how it'd be so great if the world was a different place. Yeah, that sounds like a good time. The truth is that you're hypocrites. The truth is that you walked into this room and you sat down and you didn't have a single fucking thought in your head. The truth is that you're sitting out there in the dark watching me, and on some level, you are satisfied with your life because that is the natural condition of being in the first world. It's a very satisfying place. It's built that way. It's constructed that way as a prison that you live in. I know because I fucking live there too. I know you're hypocrites because I am a hypocrite. I'm a huge hypocrite. I am so big a fucking hypocrite that I dare to stand in front of you in a light and tell you what you already fucking know. That's the deepest hypocrisy. We are hypocrites. And as soon as we acknowledge that, the beginning of wisdom can start to flower. Because once we acknowledge that we are actually hypocrites, then there's a chance, the beginning of the chance we could actually do something. But not everyone sees it that way. In fact, many of you out there probably feel this way. You've probably had that feeling. I know I have, especially when I was young. I would feel this growing, flowering, wild discontent. I would think everybody lies. Everybody is full of shit. No one tells the truth. Everything is immoral. Nothing is ethical. The systems are corrupt. The government doesn't work. The corporations are everywhere. Everything disintegrates around me. Why try? Nothing is ever going to change. Why try? That's a legitimate point of view. I would even argue it's a dominant point of view. If we are brave enough to look into our hearts, we all know how deep the weed of apathy goes, how strong it is, how seductive. Because the most seductive thing about giving up all hope is that you no longer need to try. The most seductive thing about that is you no longer need to resist in any way because the future was hopeless anyway. The reason to resist, the reason to actually get up in the morning, the reason even to continue to listen to this talk, because there are some of you already who are thinking, the large man is yelling at me, I don't like it. I don't like it. I know it's a festival of dangerous ideas, but he's just supposed to talk about corporations. He's not supposed to talk about me. I'm a person. I'm not a corporation. Shut the fuck up. But the truth is, we're all implicated. We are all part of this, each and every part of it. And this is a war. This is a war. And if you've never thought of it as a war, then you have been fucking asleep. It is time to wake up. This is a war. And in a war, we work with imperfect tools. In a war, we work with the situation as it lies on the ground. So even though this festival is, in a sense, a sham, even though we're all embedded in a shitty, fucked up cultural context, even though most of you are completely complacent and half of you are asleep, we are going to talk today. We are going to talk and strive to make things happen because the only philosopher that anyone actually needs to study, Albert Camus, he understood that the world is absurd. That the world is absurd, and the only thing that can save us from that absurdity is to make human sense of the mess we're in. And that is what we are going to try to do in the few brief minutes that we are given together. As creatures of the first world, who have an enormous amount of power and privilege, even though I'm sure you don't feel like you do, you feel like you are benighted and oppressed, and in a sense you are, but compared to most of the world's population, you have an enormous amount of power. As creatures with that power, you owe it to yourself to travel to the pyramids before you die. Because the pyramids should be seen by every person, by every ostensibly free person in the world, because they are a marvelous thing. They rise up out of the desert, enormous, and the scale of them is almost incomprehensible. It's one of the few works of man that challenges the time scale of nature itself. The pyramids, the Great Pyramid, is almost 5 millennia old. It is so old that it breaks the back of time. It travels back and back and back until we can scarcely count it. It is so old that for the first 3,800 years of its existence, it was the tallest building on this planet. It may be the tallest building in all history, but we do not go back that far. Human beings go back tens and hundreds of thousands of years. We have no memory of those times. But because of the scale of that pyramid, we have this strange artifact from a time we cannot even really understand. It sits there in the desert. And I would ask you now to imagine the pyramid. And I know from our shared education in the first world that you've seen many images of it in your life. Some of you have perhaps had that privilege and gone and seen it for yourself, stood there in the sand and looked up at its massive face. See it now. Picture it in your mind. Now, imagine it as it used to be, because what you see before you are just the stones that were stacked up, the structural underpinnings of the pyramid itself. It was once faced in limestone, perfectly white. It is said that you could not fit a knife blade between any of the sheets of limestone, and that is probably true because the measurements of the internal structures of the pyramid are exquisite. It is so well made. Picture it, perfectly white, huge, unshakable, indestructible, this enormous thing, this white, perfect, geometric figure hanging in front of you. It stayed that way for millennia until an earthquake caused some of the sheets to break loose, and then looters, and you know the story of civilization asserting itself. I have always loved pyramids. I love Egyptology, always have. I live in New York City. And at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, they actually have a whole wing dedicated to the tombs and shrines of Egypt. And they have a room, this beautiful room. It has a whole temple that was under the waves when they built the Anwar Dam. They pulled the shrine up and brought it in pieces back to America, the way my country likes to bring all sorts of trophies back to itself. They rebuilt it there in this enormous room. I love that room. I love the way the ancient sits right beside the modern. I love the way the perfect edges of the shrine can be seen, and then the glassed-in walls, and beyond it, Central Park. If you get a chance to go to America, make sure you see that too. These pyramids, for years, people have marveled. How were they built? How were they constructed? Because the scale is so great. They are so huge. They must have taken a whole civilization working together to realize them, and it's such exacting precision. So perfectly made. It's actually almost unimaginable to us how it was actually done. It's just very hard for us to understand, just as all of Egypt is hard to understand, because if you study Egypt, you soon run into this phenomenon they call the Egypt problem or the Egyptian problem. And the problem is very simple. It's that we, in a modern context, have a very hard time understanding the Egyptians. It's very hard to understand their religions. We can plot through the elements of the religion. We have great records. We know what happened. We just don't know why. We don't know why. There's this essential gap, often captured by the youngest children who look at pictures of the pyramids or see the pyramids in person and ask their parents, why did they build these things? And we have no real answer. Oh, we say it's for the pharaohs, it's because the pharaoh is going to the afterlife, it's going to ensure that he arrives in a new world. We have explanations like that, but they're not valid. They're not real. We don't actually understand the heart of it. We don't really understand why a whole civilization would be dedicated to such a remarkable enterprise. We don't comprehend that. For years, the Greeks, starting with the Greeks, propagated the belief that the pyramids were built by slaves. They must have been built by tens of thousands of slaves. If you study Egyptology, you'll know that that has fallen out of favor, that all of the studies of exactly how skilled the craftsmanship is, how extensive and intricate all the workings are, make it clear that these were not unskilled slaves. Instead, they must have been skilled laborers, possibly 200,000 of them, working for decades to realize this thing. There's a gap in our consciousness that makes it difficult for us to even comprehend that scale, that many workers. We have workers like that. In the Southeast Asian continent, they work to make all of our possessions, but to imagine them together building a giant stone edifice is hard for the mind to actually comprehend. Today we live in a modern world. We live in a modern world that's very comprehensible to us. It makes sense, doesn't it? Day after day, that's our job, to make sense of the world. But I ask you, what will they see us as in 2,000 and 3,000 years? What will remain of what we have built when they cast their eye back? When they look at this age, what will they say? They will say, that was the dawning of the corporate age. That was the beginning of the time when people began to give themselves over to corporations, when they built these things larger than themselves that ran through them, and they dedicated their lives to them. They gave everything they had to them to make them as wealthy and as powerful as possible. And children of that time will ask, why? Why did they do this thing? Why did they make these enormous edifices? Why did they do that? And the people will have no answer for them, because there will be no context. It will be impossible to explain, the way that religions are always impossible to truly explain, because this is a religion. We are engaged in an act of huge and ongoing worship. We have created these things, these corporations. We worship them, we give them the strength they need, and they hang above us like stars, fixed in the heavens. If you go outside at night, you can see them shining down on us. You can take your children outside and you can point up into the sky and say, look, there's Goldman Sachs, and there's Amazon.com, and there's Apple, and there's Dell, and all of them arrayed across the heavens, shining down on us. We do this. We educate our children this way. We show them the shape of the world as we know it to be. And these corporations that began as trading companies for the Dutch, the idea of the corporation has grown and grown, and now they're endowed with all the rights of man and none of the responsibilities. And we rail about that, but we accept it. We accept it as an inevitable fact of our lives. We accept it as the way things are. When we look out into the world, we do not remember that just a few hundred years ago, there were no corporations. 1,000 years ago, nothing of the social order that exists now was practically in existence. You go back in time and all of this is washed away. But here and now, where we stand, it seems so real, doesn't it? It seems so unstoppable. It seems so clear, like a pyramid rising up above us, that it could never fade, never fail. It feels like it is the inevitable future. And in this time, at the beginning of the 21st century, it is the age of the American empire. It is the age of my country's empire. My country, who lost its soul and its self when it set off that bomb at Trinity. And they rose up and became the military-industrial complex that it is now. I weep for what we have become. We reach our hand out to dominate this world economically and socially and politically. We have reached our hand out. And that military-industrial complex that is woven through my culture, that is corporatism in its naked form. My government is not a government. It is suborned by the corporations that are woven through it. It is part of the lifeblood of everything that happens. And in each and every other country, the corporations gain more and more power. When they look back on this age, they will say, there they all were at the beginning of the 21st century, the second millennium, and they did not know then, but it was the beginning of the end of the age of the nation state and the rise of the corporation. That is what they will say. That is where we sit in time. And the truth is that for all the horrors the 20th century visited on us, Stalin and Mao and Hitler, these monsters are monsters of ego. They are monstrous things. They are people who were once just like us, human beings, who then take power for themselves and are twisted by that power until they do things that are almost unimaginable to us. They are horrors, but they are still human. They are still human, and that is why their evil is comprehensible to us. None of us wants to feel affinity with Mao, with Stalin, with Hitler, but it is possible to do so. It is possible to go back and see the stories of their childhood. It is possible to dissect their histories, and so many have done so, and to look through those biographies and see the strands and strains, the social forces that were at work, what led them to the place where they did what they did. It does not mean we accept it or condone it, but we can understand it. Why? Because it's a human story, and we are human beings. We are good at understanding impulse. We're good at understanding emotion and narrative. That's the reason I can talk to you this morning, is because you are human and I am human. There's something that happens in the dark, this gestalt. You coalesce into an audience, and then we can actually talk about something. It's a marvelous, marvelous process. It's an inherently human one. I treasure it, and so should you. The whole fact that we can come together like this. Mao and Stalin and Hitler are horrifying, but they are human. The corporations are not human. And you need to remember this. You need to remember it every time you're tempted to speak glibly about how evil a corporation is being. A corporation can never be evil. A corporation can never aspire to that kind of humanity. Corporations are inherently amoral. They exist outside of any framework of humanity. They do not understand humanity at all. And we have chosen to create them. We have chosen to endow them with these powers. And now they live amongst us and above us. We made that choice. We gave them that strength. We continue to give that strength to them day after day after day. And that is why this is a war. There's a war going on right now between the human and the inhuman. And as horrifying as the human is, as horrifying as we can be to each other in this room, insofar as anyone here can imagine under terrible circumstances murdering another person, as terrible as the things any of us can cook up in this room, we are not actually corporations. Because the corporations have not even a glimmer of humanity. They are constructs that wander the landscape, doing what they will. What future anthropologists will wonder at, though, they will ask themselves, if that's all true, why did they do it? Why did they do it to themselves? Because let us be clear, we can all take a lot of comfort in thinking that they're these Lovecraftian creatures from outside of reality impinging on us, but we do it to ourselves. There would not be corporations if there were not people to run them, were not people to work them. The corporation is so inhuman because it is almost non-existent without the people to motivate it. There is no corporation at all. A corporation is a compact between the people who are inside of it. In its oldest form, the original corporations had charters that said what a corporation was for. And you would only make a corporation if you were trying to incorporate to do something, some project larger than any one individual. And then when you came together to make that project realized, it would also, in that charter, have the terms of dissolution. Because once you were done, whatever that project was, of course, you would dissolve that corporation because you wouldn't just leave something like that lying around. Because if you did that, you can imagine a world where those corporations would just grow. Because what else would they do? If they had no objective and no ending, they would just grow. They would become very different than us, alien to us, because they would have no arc to their days. Everyone in this room is going to die. You are, I assure you, and so will I. And thank God for that, because that gift of death is what defines us. That gift is what makes us human. The arc of our days ensures that we will live a life that is measured. Corporations do not die, and they have no conception of death. They just go on and on and on and on. And because there is no arc to them, there's nothing human in them. There's nothing that can stop them in that sense. Corporations would not exist without us, without you. You are complicit. I am complicit. We are all complicit. We make this possible. We are in a hell of our own making. We live in here and we make it day after day after day. We live in this landscape. So the question becomes, what are we going to do? What are we actually going to do? Because that's where these talks break down, isn't it? We rant and rave over the state of things. We talk about the landscape as we see it, and then when we're done, we sigh and we return to the world as it was. We whisper to ourselves, I don't know, I'd like to do something, but it's so hard to do anything. It'd be so much easier if someone else did something. I don't know. I don't even know what I could do. Guy is so annoying. Jesus. I want to go get another cup of coffee. I hear you. I hear you. The truth is that you need a new metaphor. You need a new landscape. You need to stop pretending that you are free. Because every day you believe that you are free, you suffer from terrible guilt. Why do you live in such a world where you have so much but have done so little? Fuck that noise. You need to understand that you are not free. You need to understand that you live in an occupied country. And your country is occupied by corporations. And like any occupied country, there are lessons that we can draw from. There's a history of the duty of resistance. You need to look back to Vichy France. You need to look back to what people do when they are occupied. They resist. And they resist in 1,000 different little ways. Resistance needs to become our religion. If you want to do this, if you want to be on the side of humanity, you need to resist. And in occupied France, not everyone was a sexy member of some resistant fighter, although, of course, in the years that followed, after the war was won, everybody was in the resistance, weren't they? Like once it turned sexy, then everybody was in the resistance doing something. But you know that's not fucking true, right? You know that most people are not in the resistance. You know that many of you out there in the darkness aren't in the resistance now. I mean, I'm glad you came to this talk, and I'm sure in your hearts you'd like to resist, but when you weigh yourself, I think you'll find yourself wanting. I know I find myself wanting. I know there's so much more I could do. There's so many things I could do, but there are concrete steps we can definitely take. The biggest, I think, is to understand that commoditization is a deep, deep problem. We often think of ourselves as consumers. Even in our resistance, we'll say to ourselves, what could I buy? What's the right thing I could buy? I want to spend my money somewhere where it's effective. I want to only spend my money on things that are the right things to buy. Fuck that. I don't care. I don't care what you're fucking buying. I care about what you do. What do you do? Because there are people out there in the darkness right now, today, whom I am looking out at, who work at corporations. You are part of the problem. You are absolutely part of the problem. And don't fucking lie to yourself and tell yourself that you're not. Don't leave here tittering, thinking how it's not you, and you do a lot of nice things and you give money to some great charities. It's wonderful. No, fuck you. You're part of the problem. You are. And if you're serious about resistance, you need to start today and figure out how you're going to stop being part of the problem. People don't have to work for and inside of corporations. They don't have to. People can find things to do. And the more people who do not work inside a corporate context, the better it is for humanity. And there are levels like anything. Each of you is going to be the arbiter of your own existence. I mean, it's not like I'm going to judge you. You're just going to have yourself to judge you in the night when you lie in your bed. You know what the truth is. I do what I can do. In my own life, for instance, I freelance everywhere. I work with corporations all the time. I'm constantly sucking that corporate cock. But I do everything I can not to be chained up. I do everything I can to suck as little cock as possible. And when I can, I try to pick the really nice cock. I do what I can. And it's important to me, for instance, years ago, for tax purposes, people were always trying to get me to incorporate. I'm never going to incorporate. The last fucking thing I'm going to do is make another corporation. It's important because every corporation that's made is a limited liability corporation. Every single one that's created limits liability. You understand that abstraction is the central tool of corporatism. Once you create layers of abstraction, once human beings are not responsible for the things that are done inside that company, that is how things start to go wrong. If you have a job, if you do something, you need to actually be able to explain what you do in a single sentence. If you cannot explain what you do in a single sentence, you are probably a corporate whore. You know that's true, don't you? Because the systems get more and more complicated. If you're actually doing something, you should be able to explain it really quickly. Like, my job is, I talk to people. You have different skills and gifts, all of you. But you can all work. You can all do things in this society. I know you can. Human beings are amazing. And what an amazing world it would be if more of us actually had jobs that did something, that looked and fought and scrambled to look for something in their lives they could actually do, and then made those spaces for themselves and then did those things. It's possible. It is possible. Corporations need us to be their priests and their soldiers. They need us to shuffle the papers back and forth. They need us to have day jobs. They exploit us that way. If we leave, that is one less person that they have. And each new free person is a new free voice to actually speak about the shape of the world. And there are some careers that bear special responsibility. If you're a banker, you have a lot to answer for. It's an abstract job. It's a highly abstract job. And odds are you have not done a single thing with your fucking life. Odds are you have taken money and used it to make more money. And you should be ashamed of yourself that you live on this earth, that you breathe this air. You had all this time and you did fuck all with it. You don't have to do that, though. You could actually do something. I've never met a banker yet who wasn't smart enough to know that they actually had other gifts, because the world is filled with gifted humans and no one is gifted at banking. That's a sham and a delusion. That's a perversion where you take the gifts you did have to do something worthwhile with your time and you piss them out on the ground so you could grab money from other people. It's bullshit. If you know bankers, you need to know this in your heart. You need to know it, and you need to distance yourself from them. Lawyers are close behind. It is possible for a lawyer to use the law to work toward justice. It is possible. I have almost never seen it in my life, but it is possible. And if you are a lawyer, ooh, you're walking right on that knife's edge, aren't you? You're right there, ready to fall right into the devil's pocket. Because honestly, are you actually using your skills to work toward justice? Are you? Day after day. I want to hear about your pro bono work. I don't want to hear about what you do on the side. I want to hear about what you do, what your job is, what you have dedicated your life to. Because all of you in this culture, like my own, there's a strong streak of Puritanism here. We are what we do. What you choose to do with your life defines you. That is where you resist corporatism. They need us to work for them. If you have friends who are lawyers that work in a corporate context, you need to quit them. You need to shun them. You need to drop them. Social shaming is a very powerful impulse. They need to know the truth, and they need to be discarded. And that shame increases, and we inculcate it in our children. There will be less in the next generation. All of the lawyers and bankers will have to breed with each other, and they will have stunted children, who are the only ones who will go on to be more bankers and lawyers, and eventually the whole fucking breed will die out entirely. And this brings up an important point. It's very important. This needs to be a joyful resistance. There has to be humor woven through it. Some of you are feeling that now. You're like, is he serious? Oh my God. I don't know. He's kind of funny. I don't think he's serious. I'm very fucking serious. Let me clear that up for you if you have a problem with levels. But it has to be a joyful resistance. The truth is, this is a human movement. We are human beings. If we do not resist joyfully, if we forget how to laugh, how to actually open ourselves up and laugh, we will destroy ourselves before we actually get anywhere. That's the problem with the atheism movement. I'm an atheist. I love atheism. Fuck God. Fuck that guy, stupid God. But the atheists are insufferable. They're totally insufferable as a movement. It's horrible. They spend all their time screaming and yelling in this horrific, nasty kind of way. No, you need both sides. You need to take all the fire and brimstone I've been pouring out on you, and you can acknowledge we're at the Festival of Dangerous Ideas. So, I'm bringing it kind of old school style. You have to take that, and you need to combine it with the steel, the flexibility to laugh in their faces, to laugh at them, to laugh at their contexts, to open up your mouth and let the sound come out. I have friends right now in the city I come from. They're occupying Wall Street. They have been there for days and days and days, and did the world laugh at them? The world still laughs at them, that they would be so foolish to think that this would even work. But even now, more people are joining them. And even if they fall, they win. Even if they fall, even if they fail, they cannot fail. Because the whole effort is to crack the door open even a sliver, to open your mind to the idea that there could be a different context, that there could be a different way that things could actually be. We begin to forget. We begin to forget immediately as we walk through our lives. We are so good at erasing what we see. We're so good at lying to ourselves. I know it is hard to hear that you are a corporate whore, but you are. You are, and you need to embrace that. You need to understand that you are if you're ever going to be free of it, if you're ever going to try to do something with your life that doesn't actually make the world more shitty. It's important. If even one person in the sound of my voice made the decision to not work with the corporations, if it was one more person rose up, this life of mine would be worthwhile. We need to throw ourselves into the fire that way. That's how movements work. You need to be able to sacrifice yourself. What do you want? You want to live forever? That's what the corporations are doing. In World War I, they would tell the doughboys as they jumped over the trenches and they ran towards the machine gun nest. They would say, "What do you want to live forever?" And the men would jump up into the fire and they would run forward. This is considerably easier than that. I know you're attached to your way of life. I know you like your job. I bet you enjoy your glass desk and your view of the downtown business district. And it's really pleasant the way you have enough extra money to go to those lunch places. But it's wrong. It's fucking wrong, and you know it. You always knew it. You always knew it. You need to make choices. If you're going to be part of this thing, you need to let it go. You need to find a sustainable way to not be doing that. The truth is that we are together. We are human beings. We are bound together in this journey, each and every one of us. We are in this room and we barely know each other. We've spent only these brief minutes together. But I feel like you are my brothers and sisters. I feel like we are bound together by this human thing. They say that the Great Pyramid, the largest of the pyramids, took 40 years between its planning and its execution and its construction. 40 years. Incredibly long, a human lifetime, especially in those days. But also a twinkling, almost like no time at all, 40 years in the great span of nations, even less time. When we look at geology and nature, almost no time at all. And what wonders they made, that marvelous edifice that we do not understand, that sits there, challenging us to actually dream that things could be different. When they finished that pyramid, They buried a pharaoh inside, and they buried his queen, and they buried the workers. Not all the workers, but the very special workers. They buried the very special workers and the workers' wives and their children. What a thing that must have been. Picture it, if you would. Return to that white, perfect shape. Not what it is now, diminished, but what it must have looked like just after the death of the Pharaoh, just completed, shining there. Not a mark of pollution on it, because there is no pollution in the world yet. Just a perfect white thing along the banks of the Nile, and then they process inside. And imagine that you are one of those workers inside, awaiting your destiny with your wife and your child. You are so lucky to have been part of this thing. You are so lucky to have spent your life and the lives of those who came before you in building this thing. You sit inside that mausoleum, and there must have been a moment when they began to seal it up. There must have been a moment for those men and women when a wild human cry must have rose up inside of them. They must have thought, oh my God, my children. And me, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? There must have been a moment. Probably just as they put the last block into place, there must have been a moment when they said, why did I do this? Why did I give my life over to this thing? And perhaps it was such an inchoate scream, they wouldn't even be able to frame it. They wouldn't even be able to say what alternative there could have been. They can't imagine one, but something human in them struggles to accept that they will die in this dark place alone, that their children will die, that they have condemned their children, their children's children, and everyone that follows them into darkness. There must have been a moment when they struggled with that. And outside that dark mausoleum, that dark corporate place of death, the Nile sails by imperturbable, immortal, the same as it has for thousands of years. And the women go down there in the springtime today, just as they do thousands of years ago. They go down there today in the spring to do the rites, the same rites that have evolved over time, the ones they did for Isis and Anubis, the rites of spring. It's spring outside this building right now. You're sitting in the darkness. But when you walk outside, the light will shine down on you. It is spring. It is a time of rebirth. You bury the things from the past and you hope that they will grow, that something will take root, that some seed will flower into being. And above us, the stars that shine on us today, those fixed, immutable stars I told you about, they are the same stars that shone 5,000 years ago. They are the same stars shining down. We cannot change the stars. We cannot change the fixed things in the universe. They are fixed and larger than ourselves, but we decide what constellations there are. We draw the connections between those stars because that is the human story. We shape the world as we want to see it by making those mythologies. And as we shape the world, we shape ourselves and the future. Thank you.
Any bankers or lawyers left? I thought it was very appropriate, actually. It's a very appropriate setting for that attack on bankers' breeding. Because do you walk here to go to the Opera House on a Friday night and see the opera bar? It's like a captive breeding program for bankers.
It's true.
It's where they're doing it.
I've seen them on my way back from the shows. It's really something.
It's something.
It
all
is.
Right. It is something, right. And a lot of people would say, even people who share your disquiet about the corporations would say, the main effort to change them is not to stop individuals joining them, but for the society to make rules of behaviour appropriate to control the corporations. This is the kind of the Fabian socialist a way of approaching the problem. Why isn't that your approach?
Oh, I mean, that could be part of my approach. I mean, I really see the talk today in two parts. There was my speech here, and then there's our talking here afterwards. And honestly, that approach, that discussion is a really valid one and very interesting, and doesn't mean fuck all in this context. I'm here to talk to these people about collaborating with corporations. I'm here to talk about the hard part, which is that we always talk about regulating them, and we never talk about our complicity with them. Instead, we corporatize ourselves and talk about what we could or couldn't buy and how we could change things that way, because it is harder to talk about the fact that most of us are embedded in the system very directly every day, doing 8 or 10 or 12 hours of harm over and over again. So since this is the Festival of Dangerous Ideas, I thought I'd take my best shot at actually talking about what would be hard to talk about. I was worried that the other thing would be so incredibly well known that we'd just be retreading old ground. Like, you guys already know that argument, so, read up on it and then, discuss it. But we should talk instead about what you could do.
Whilst we're talking about complicity, we're on the territory of your other show, the Steve Jobs Show, which is about this. I think part of the power of the show is it's about this shiny object in almost all of our pockets. You've had an enormous reaction from people who've seen the show and kind of felt that confusion about what they've seen on stage and what they know gives them delight in their lounge room.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an enormous disconnect because we're human beings, and so we enjoy pleasure. We enjoy things that we like, and Apple products are pleasurable. The Sydney Opera House is pleasurable. Eating good food is pleasurable. And because of the construction of our current reality, most of those things fuck people over in large and small ways. And so it's our job as sentient creatures, because we're in a position where we do have some power, to begin to try and grapple with what we do. And so it often galls me. I mean, I run into this a lot in my life, where I know people who have incredible social ideals. They're very empowered about addressing social ills, and then they have a day job working at a large corporation. And I just think that disconnect is vast and indicative of a huge problem in the way we lens ourselves. So I'm trying to challenge them to know that, sacrifice is painful. I mean, I acknowledge that. It's very painful. It's very painful. I live in America, because I'm not corporatized, because I haven't tied myself to any corporation, even one, that I would work as like a theater artist in some sort of corporate relationship. I have no health insurance. I have to buy my own health insurance in these obscure, ridiculous systems that are so insanely expensive that I can't even fucking believe it. I could avoid that by making myself someone's bitch. I am trying very hard to not be anyone's bitch. And I fail sometimes. I totally fail. I think we're all going to fail. And a big part of this, I think, is acknowledging that when we fail, we get up and we try again. Because the other thing that can happen is people get very rigid. They're like, well, everything's corporatized, and what are you going to do? I'm just going to stop. And it's not acceptable.
We had a big reaction when you came on the radio from people who kind of didn't then know what to do with their Apple products, having heard you. It was like reading Dickens. Do you get that sort of email when you're after the stage show at the Opera House?
Yeah. I get a lot of emails about this show in particular. And other monologues. A lot of my monologues are about corporatism in different forms, and so they often disturb people in that way. And so I do hear from a lot of people. And, I hear from them, to be honest, some are talking to me, some are just talking to work out things for themselves. You know what I mean? Like people always knew, for instance, that, if you asked someone, if you said a statement, you said, China is a worker's paradise, there's no one that actually thinks that's true. No one, not in this room, and not in the general populace. No one actually thinks that's true. So in truth, almost no one is actually ignorant. People are instead in denial, because they know it's not good. They just don't know the details of how not good it is, and they don't want to know the details because that'll be unpleasant, and their iPad is so awesome, and so it'll be hard once you hear this. And so a lot of the job, I think, my job, is to sort of shine a light through things and to look for the truth, and the truth is not always comfortable. If it was comfortable, it'd be out in front of us.
Hence the metaphor about the pyramid workers who are definitely in denial.
Yeah, I mean...
Questions?
That's terrible.
Questions?
That's pretty fantastic.
Questions? Yeah.
Hi, I
As loud as you can.
Yeah, I will do. I work for a charity and I feel great about the work that we do. I really believe in it. But I only do the work that I do because of the very people that you're talking about, people who work in corporations, people who earn these massive amounts of money. And I often think to myself, maybe I should have actually just trained and earned a 6-figure salary, then I could spend the amount that I'm earning, I could perhaps do much more better that way with a greater amount of money. And like, what do you sort of see the relationship between that sort of dichotomy, relationship between charities and the corporate sector, I guess. And I guess more broadly your approach to charities.
Did everyone hear that kind of question about how people who work in the charity sector end up with not much economic power in the world, but also how they relate to corporations?
Well, I mean, we're talking about in the context, and let's be clear about this talk today. Because I took the charge of this festival very seriously, I have these ideas all the time. I don't always share them quite so openly because people get upset with you. So I am a hypocrite like everyone else. I shield sometimes my actual thinking. But if we're being honest, I'm very happy you didn't sell yourself out and get a 6-figure salary because I think that's immoral and unethical. So I'm in favor of everyone that has not done that with their life. I have friends that have made enormous sums of money doing one thing or another thing that in my heart, given my framework, I would consider unethical. If I didn't talk to anyone that I thought had never done anything unethical, I would have no friends whatsoever, including myself, because I've done many unethical things too. That all said, I do think it's important to gauge a degree of social shaming. And I actually think that when people who have made enormous amounts of money through corporations and through sort of business, the fact that they want to give to social good could be argued as some sort of penance, or it could be argued as some sort of attempt at changing things. Like, I have all this temporal power, I want to use it to do something. At the same time, the effort to make that power, I really believe that each person's responsible for what they have done in their lives, and I can't square working with corporations in that context with like a larger ethical framework. I can't. I've worked at corporations, and I really regret the time that I spent doing it. So I guess it's the situation you'd expect. It's a very charged, complex landscape. I mean, I work with people all the time that if I used my own yardstick that I was propagating up here that I was talking about, I have a really hard time talking to them. At the same time, I do feel it rise up in me, and I think more people should feel it rise up in conversation when you least expect it, talking to a banker, that you need to actually tell them that they're full of shit. And I try to do that, and I consider that actually kind of a calling, that like you're required, often when it's not pleasant, at dinner parties and stuff, you have to tell people that they're full of shit. And I don't know your country that well, but I know it kind of well.
Oh, we repeat like a mantra. We'll do it for you. All bankers are bastards. All bankers are bastards. We tell our children. We know.
But you must know bankers. And then some of you do end up eating with them. And I suspect that all the children will gather around them and chant that at them at the actual table. And I'm saying maybe they should a little bit. I'm saying maybe you should.
Now, another question, ma'am.
Runs very deep. I know, for instance, in my life, I chose to follow my heart rather than sort of go off and get married to a corporation or something like that. So I did a PhD in philosophy. And I chose, and I still choose now to stay at home and do craft and things like that. But I know, for instance, like when I made a doll and make dolls and things like that, there was a part of me that wanted to sell them as if that was going to give me some kind of sense of self-worth. And so it runs quite deep in the culture. And it's a real, I mean, I've got to the stage now where I said, fuck that, I'm just going to give this to charity because they're not commercial products.
Did everyone kind of hear it's basically am I right? It's how you find your self-worth when you're not selling stuff in a culture that values that above all things.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, I for the purpose of this talk anyway, and in my own heart, I draw a real line between corporatization and commodification. And both are problematic, but they're actually quite different. Like most people that are commodifying things are corporations, the effort to take things, remove them from any context and make them into objects that people then buy. You know, the truth is, my issue today, and like the central issue of my life, is with corporatization, the abstraction of business, so there's no actual human in charge of it. I think small business owners, or even large business owners, when they're not corporatized and there is someone actually in charge, are fantastic, you know, especially when they behave in an ethical manner and they can go to sleep at night and they know what the hell they're doing. Like my issue, and a lot of the problems I think that wind their way through our culture are the level of abstraction, so that the business, as it becomes corporatized, is not attached to any human. No one is actually in charge in terms of actually being liable for anything that is actually happening. And because no one person is liable, the corporation can do things that any one person would think was so unethical, and they would go to prison for. So small business people doing something, I mean, people sell things for things all the time.
I think it's more like, how do you find self-worth when the rest of society seems to be yelling out that the more money you've got, is the amount of money is the measure of the man or the person?
I think it's difficult, but it's the same way any of us construct a life. I mean, I think that if you make decisions like this to talk about the fact that you feel this way, you generally find other people, especially if you do a good job of that idea we were trying to propagate here, that it needs to be joyful. So you don't make that atheist error that the current atheism community making, where you're unbelievably alienating because you're screaming at people. If you can try to bring people together, then you can find other people who are interested in a human exchange. I mean, I think it's about building actual communities, and a lot of corporatization is about dissolving communities. Like, it really serves corporatism well if we don't have communities, if instead we're individuals who consume, each of us on our own tracks, and we relate to each other only through finance.
Now, if we're quick, we can fit in 2 more questions. So maybe from this side of the room, ma'am. Yes.
So if the age of the pharaohs passed, you know, where do you see the age of this corporatization ending or fading? Because I guess one of the lost opportunities, perhaps as far as bankers and such go, could have been, you know, the GFC and post-financial crisis. Really nothing has changed. So how long, you know, do you see this going on for?
Everyone hear that? Yeah, how long will this corporate period go on, and will it go on for as long as the pharaohs?
Well, I mean, I think that for me, the performance today, the talk, as we call it, was a kind of prayer, because I do hope that in the future, when people look back, they will not be able to understand this era, because that time will have passed. The time of corporatism in relation to human history is very short so far, even though it feels so dominant. I'm embedded in my context, so it's actually very hard for me to imagine what follows an era of corporatism, because I live with it, you know, as deeply as everyone else does. But I do believe that, I will say this, that what you said about the global financial crisis, I don't actually believe that the global financial crisis is over. I think when we look back at this era, we won't say that it ended, and then, I mean, I think the instability in the market, none of the fundamentals were actually fixed. And I believe, based on this other monologue I'm doing and time I spent in southern China, that the labor situation in China itself is really disruptive. And I think there are going to be changes in the next 20, 30, 40 years to the nature of that country. And since our entire way of life is built on that country remaining fascist, I think that there's going to be tremendous disruption. And so I don't know what's going to happen, but I do believe that change is constant and more common than we believe. We tend to think things are always the way they are at this moment.
Okay, one last question. What about you, sir, in the hat?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of the corporation predates the nation state in many areas of the world. I mean, what do you see as the kind of future structure that you would suggest instead of a corporation? Would it be cooperatives or social enterprise? What's the alternative as a constructed idea that you think might be?
So what's the alternative to the corporation?
I'm really a creature of the metaphor I was describing today. Like, I see myself in a war, and so I frame myself in that war as a resistance fighter. Resistance fighters are notoriously bad at forging the next government. So I have ideas about what the world could be, but truthfully, there are people who will come after me that I hope will have the opportunity to make those decisions. Truthfully, I don't think I have a truly good idea. I know I want the corporations to loosen their hold. I know I want them disrupted and dismayed, and I want them disassembled so that they are weakened and battered. And so I dedicate myself to that and to trying to get people to open their eyes to the fact that because they work for them and are them, it's actually the human spirit working against itself. Like, we could actually choose not to participate in that way, and they would be powerless. And so I don't think I'm the right one.
And one last one, sir.
Yes, I'm just wondering, you criticise bankers and lawyers, so I'm wondering if there's okay roles, and related to that last question, can we perhaps be reforming corporations? Because if there are people that have evil tendencies, and those who see a problem all walk away, what is left is sustained by the evil tendencies, and we have a problem. But perhaps an alternative path to that future is recognising the reality, not copying it, and constantly trying to make people accountable. Yes, I work in a corporation, and abstraction is exactly the problem. And we have to fight against abstraction and make someone accountable for every single decision.
Okay, so can good people change corporations from within? Mike?
Well, I think that you're wrong. I think that the core thing that you're upset by, what I'm saying, frankly, corporation is a framework. If you want to, if we want to defeat that, make them sole proprietorships. Honestly, Citicorp, whoever's in charge of Citicorp, should be personally responsible for everything that Citicorp does. I don't think you'd have a hard time finding someone who wants that fucking job. And I think that's the way it should be, because maybe they're too fucking big. Because if people were actually responsible for everything what is currently called a corporation does, people would think twice before they took those enormous salaries and those giant bonuses. And maybe they would earn those bonuses, legitimately earn them, if they were personally responsible. And if they were personally responsible, legally bound by everything they do. Oh, I'd love to see the audits. I would love to see what they would do. You would get in that position, they'd be like, bring me everything you're fucking doing. Everything, because I'm going to prison if you people are doing anything that's not above board. So what I'm saying is, the system itself is broken, the system of corporations. So other people can work to reform a corporation. I think they're like demons. I'm not interested in putting them back in bottles. I want to kill them.
Please thank Mike Daisey.
This is Big Ideas from the ABC.